I have been through some really challenging things in my life that have, like so many of your listeners, I'm sure, led us to a path that has not only created us to be really passionate about the businesses that we do, but kind of called to a healing work of some kind, where in my own journey, I found so much of myself and I was able to drop the parts of me that weren't really me and be able to move forward with that confidence and that clarity so that I can just show up in the world as me. And by doing that, give other people the permission to show up in the world as themselves. And in the work that I do of light filled astrology and human design, I literally get to show people the map of their divine design to say, hey, sweetie, this is you. And it's amazing. And this part right here, this is kind of challenging. And this part right here is really cool. And it just allows you to lean into often who you always wanted to be. And it's like, hey, guess what? That's actually who you are. And you can drop the shoulds and you can just be who you have always been meant to be.
Welcome back again to another episode of the Confident Mompreneur podcast, where we talk to real women from around the globe about real life difficulties and triumphs in momhood, business, relationships, health, and more. I'm your host, Kyrie, ready to give you real actionable advice to help you become the best, most confident version of you in all areas of your life. Let's get into it. Well, welcome on today, Naomi. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here.
And you actually reached out to me to schedule this. So I am like super excited to learn more about you and all of the cool things that you did and do. We've kind of just like been in each other's Facebook worlds for a little bit now, but I'm excited to kind of dive deeper into getting to know you.
Thank you. Yes. And it's very, very rare that I initiate conversations with people like this. I just had like this green light moment and I was like, I'll just reach out. We'll just see where this goes. And so it just felt like divine orchestration.
Yes, I love that so much. And I think that's so funny that you say that because usually I am the one reaching out to people, but I haven't been recently. And so when you like brought it up, I'm like, I'm so glad you did because otherwise this probably wouldn't have happened. So thank you for reaching out.
And thank you so much for responding. I just feel like there's something really magical that you and I get to kind of bring about today that your listeners are just going to benefit from so much.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So tell me a little bit about you and all of the things that you do.
So, my name is Naomi, and I live in beautiful southern Utah. Think like Zion National Park, like kind of views everywhere all the time. And it's basically paradise. And I am married to the most amazing man in the entire world. We've been married 3.5 years. I've had two really horrific marriages and divorces, and I have 3 children between those two marriages. And my husband has his 3 kids. So, between the two of us, we've got our 6, and it's a fun little jumble. And I have been through some really challenging things in my life that have, like so many of your listeners, I'm sure, led us to a path that has not only created us to be really passionate about the businesses that we do, but kind of called to a healing work of some kind, where in my own journey to just sort of not lose my sanity, I found so much of myself and I was able to drop the parts of me that weren't really me and be able to move forward with that confidence and that clarity so that I can just show up in the world as me. And by doing that, give other people the permission to show up in the world as themselves. And in the work that I do of light filled astrology and human design, I literally get to show people the map of their divine design to say, hey, sweetie, this is you. And it's amazing. And this part right here, this is kind of challenging. And this part right here is really cool. And it just allows you to lean into often who you always wanted to be. And it's like, hey, guess what? That's actually who you are. And you can drop the shoulds and you can just be who you have always been meant to be.
I love that so much. And we've talked a little bit on the podcast before about like some of those astrology, human design kind of things, but I feel like we've never really dove super deep into it. And I feel like with those things you can get super deep. But I do love that they always just like kind of give you that permission to be the person that you're truly meant to be. Because I feel like um especially in today's age with social media and things like that, I feel like there's all of this pressure on us to be like this perfect human being with everything together all of the time. And like we have this very idealistic view of who we should or should not be. And a lot of the time that's not actually truly us. It's just this projection of us that we've gained from the people that we surround ourselves with, the ideas that we've kind of grown up around, and all of those different mixes and parts of, just being a human being.
100%. I could not agree more. I'm over here like, amen, hallelujah. Yeah, we get so conditioned by our family of origin, by the culture. You could have been raised with the most amazing, loving parents, and they still screwed you up. There was something that they didn't do or that they did do that consistently harmed you, or you could have been raised by completely absent or abusive parents. But we get these imprints in us of who we think we should be. And astrology and human design gives us the map not only of who we have always been, who we divinely, I believe, chose to be, but also we can see kind of where the shadows would pop up, because you'll probably be showing up in the shadow aspects of some of your stuff if you aren't living true to yourself. And the best way to know that you're not living true to yourself is you're just not as happy as you could be. If you were to be like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy am I? And it's like less than an 8, then astrology and human design will probably crack your world wide open in the best way, so you can just know who you are and stop being who you're not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Well, and I was looking into some of your stuff earlier. Obviously, I was like dabbling on your website and all of those things, and you talk about kind of bringing these what people would think as woo-woo, like type of things in to also like, you know, being spiritual and maybe being religious with that too. How do you think that all of those things kind of play in together?
Yeah, it's definitely a weird world that I walk in, because I myself am a very religious person. I grew up in a very conservative Christian religion that I actually have intentionally chosen to still practice as an adult, I'll be turning 44 this year. So walking the gamut of choosing in or out of religion and having so many people in my life that have chosen in or out of religion has been really fascinating, because obviously I would need to be a very spiritual person also to be able to do the work that I do. And to me, they're one and the same. But I can appreciate that a lot of times religion is used as a control factor or a fear driver of, be afraid of God and do what's right. Otherwise, you're going to go to hell. And like, I understand that cattle prong mentality is a massive turnoff for most people. I don't really find that that's the God that I know. I call my God my great and powerful God. And I found that everybody who has a belief in a greater power, a divine source of some kind, has something that they call it. And I think that that's really beautiful. And I've heard it even said that, like, if you're in a relationship, every single person is in a mixed faith relationship, because even if you go to the same church, you don't have the same faith. If you were to describe how God is to you, or the divine, or the universe, or source, or mother, or father, it still is going to look slightly different, because it's such a personal experience. I think religion can be beautiful to give us a structure of how to connect with each other and support each other. But at the end of the day, it's really just helping to facilitate our one-on-one connection with the divine. And in my astrology chart, I can see really clearly how I have this really magnificent balance of religion and spirituality. And I'm like, yep, there it is. That's why it's not a conflict for me, but for a lot of people, it's either or not neither. And so
Mhm.
I find that the people staunchly in the religious world sometimes don't really know how to process me, and the people like wholeheartedly in the spiritual realm just have a hard time being able to digest that I go to church every single week. But the people who I'm definitely for are those that want to keep God at the center of their life, whatever they're calling their great and powerful God, and learn about astrology and human design, because that's what I am called to do. And I don't feel called to convert anybody to astrology or human design. But for those that are like, oh, yes, yes, I think you're the teacher I've been looking for, here I am.
Love that. That is so cool. I love that you're able to balance that. Yeah, for me, I definitely grew up in that same religion and I chose to leave. But I definitely use a lot of these kind of spiritual tools to connect me to universe, higher power, whatever it is. But yeah, so I love that. How did you decide to get into this kind of world and what did it look for like for you when you were like trying to figure out that balance?
Yeah, it was definitely challenging because it wasn't like, oh, and now I'll just dump all of these preconceived beliefs that I'd reinforced for so many years. Like it was a transition. I was first introduced to human design way back in 2012. And at the time I was in a really, really messed up marriage. There was domestic violence, infidelity, just, all the terrible, right? And so I couldn't step into who I really was. That would have been a hellacious disaster.
Mhm.
And so somebody presented it to me and I looked at my chart. I will never forget the moment that I saw my human design chart. And I kind of quickly looked over just a brief summary of the chart. And I thought, there is no way that the minute I was born has any bearing on anything in my life. And I like forcefully rejected all of it. And so when people are like, that sounds like hogwash, I'm like, awesome, cool. Like, and they just expect me to argue or something. And I'm like, no, I'm not, definitely not engaging with that. Like, I
You're
just
like, I've
know,
been there too.
yeah,
Sometimes you're just not ready to hear it or see it.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I also just know that not everybody needs this in their life. Like, I think it's amazing, but it's not like a requirement to be a good person. So it's like, cool, if it's not for you, that's totally fine. And so years later, I was going through my second divorce, and like I had implied, it was violent, and like my head was just mush. I was the equivalent of gelatinous splat coming out of that. And I had just moved to a new town. I just freshly left. I just filed a protective order, like all of that kind of setting the scene.
Mhm.
And I had one girlfriend that lived in the town where I had just moved to when I first got to St. George. And she saw this one gal who did hair out of her home. She was totally eccentric and weird. She smoked a vape while she cut your hair and drank wine and had a gigantic tattoo of Edward Scissorhands on her forearm, and half the time didn't wear pants and swore like a sailor. And she was awesome. And so I go
Sounds
and
like
meet,
my kind of person.
yeah, oh, just pure authenticity. Like I just so delicious. So like I'm going and I meet Julie and everything. And I'd met her like very briefly before. And she's, starting to cut my hair and we're talking about all the things. And she's like, so when's your birthday? And I was like, well, I'm a Sagittarius, but I don't really resonate with that stuff. Just kind of trying to politely be like, not my thing. And she's like, okay, do you know the minute you're born? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everybody? No, no, not everybody knows the minute they're born just off the top of their head, but I do. And she runs my chart. She's like, oh, no wonder you know the minute you're born, your moon is in Virgo. And then she proceeds to tell me a lot of very personal stuff about myself, things that I'd known people for 10 years that I would never reveal that stuff to, or put into words things that like I didn't know how to articulate. And just like it was nothing. And I'm like, she's like, this is why you married this guy. This is why this, because she just knew that I was going through divorce. And I'm like, why is this more validating than like the dozens and dozens of hours of therapy that I've had? And so I basically was like, I need you to tell me how you know all of that stuff. Because just looking at my horoscope, that never done anything for me. It wasn't until I had somebody who had a divine affinity for astrology look at my chart and then tell me what they saw. And then it applied and then it mattered. And then I could do something with the information and I could sink into the surrender of, oh, my Venus is in Scorpio. That's in its detriment. That means that the way that I approach relationships is not going to be traditional or normal. And I need extra intensity. So, how do I get that extra intensity without setting my life on fire again? Like, and so just knowing that it's like, well, there has to be a way that this can work for me. And so it just completely changed. It rippled out into every area of my life. And so as I started to dabble in it more, I was so hesitant to talk to people about it. But I found that the more confidence that I gained in the systems of astrology and then subsequently human design came back again, the more that I cared less about what other people thought because I saw the benefit of it in my life. And I knew that God was in it. I didn't need other people to validate that to me. That was a big enough priority in my life that I wasn't going to make a serious move without, the divine going with me. And so if other people were like, I've been called all kinds of names. I've been told things. Thankfully, it doesn't happen very much, but it happens. And in human design, there's something called the heretic. And it turns out I am a heretic, which means that I am here to deliver information in such a practical and radical way that it would piss people off enough that they're going to want to tie me up and burn me at the stake. And I'm like, okay, here I am. I'll just say what I'm supposed to say and just let the fallout be what it is.
Wow, that's funny. I mean, I love that you talk about like not needing that validation from other people and knowing your own journey and what it was going to look like for you, even if it like you said, piss people off along the way. So, like, after you learned kind of what she was doing and how she was doing it, how did you then go into learning it and deciding, hey, yeah, this is actually what I'm going to do as a business?
Yeah, so I got into all the Facebook groups and everything, and those things are like a cesspool of drama, let me tell you. Like the ones with like 100,000 people in them, and just kind of combing through all the comments. Like somebody would post something, and you could tell a bunch of it was just trash, people just talking about stuff that didn't matter. But you'd find like one comment, you could tell that they knew what they were talking about, and be like, oh, that's interesting. And I'd go Google stuff, and I'd watch YouTube videos, and I kind of just sort of picked up the pieces. And at this season of my life, I had to kind of tango with my own shadow enough to retain sanity. I mean, two divorces is going to force you to look at what really matters.
Mhm.
And of course, that's a very short version, but I would imagine pretty much everybody listening has gone through something that directly compromised what they thought should be, and they came out of the wreckage with a little bit more clarity, hopefully, unless you're still stuck in it, of realizing that, oh, what I thought should be was not actually the truth. Like it was the sort of truth, but it wasn't like truth with a capital T. And so I had had enough of that wrestle with myself that I could trust myself to discern what was aligned and right and good for me, enough that I kind of it like the visual I get in my head is almost like a unicorn prancing through like a whole bunch of sludge and just like picking up the pieces that are still filled with light. And every time I would look at a different astrology class, something more structured, God was just like, nope, that's not for you. And nope, that's not for you. And once I got to the point, I'd been doing sessions for a while, and people were like, do you teach this? People were inviting me. I'm a projector, so I need to be invited. I didn't know that at the time. And people were inviting me to teach it. And God was like, yes, you're supposed to teach this. So I started teaching it. And after a while, he was like, by the way, what you're doing is called light filled astrology. And you are here to gather those that want to keep me in their space and learn this stuff. And so that's how it was born. God said, you're doing this thing. And I actually argued with him on more than one occasion about this, because I wanted nothing to do with that. I actually told God, I said, if I do this, it will limit how much that I can help people, because they have so much more to share than, quote, just astrology and human design. I have wisdom in me of how to love yourself and how to forgive yourself and how to connect with your children in a way that breaks generational patterns, and how to establish boundaries, because I was basically the worst ever of all time at boundary setting, and now I'm pretty dang good at it. And I just don't have boundary violation situations in my life hardly ever, because people just don't mess with my boundaries. They just know, like, I'm not somebody to push, because it just, I carry an energy about me now. So I went from being the worst at that to the best. So I'm like, how can I possibly limit myself, and kind of shoved myself in a corner? And God was like, yes, I hear you. However, this will open doors that can't be opened to those conversations without it. And I knew that it would close other doors, but those doors get to be handled by somebody else. I'm just doing what I feel called to do.
Mm, I love that. And it's so funny, the things that you brought up that you were like, I want to talk about this and this and this, which I'm definitely like a multi-passionate person too. And I want to teach all of the things and do all of the things too. So I get that. But I feel like what I have knowledge of when it comes to human design talks about all of those things.
Yes.
Like, so it opens the door to all of
Yes.
those conversations.
Yeah, I can get right to the heart of an issue so quick by looking at somebody's chart. Like my husband, of course, I met him after I got into all of this and everything. He didn't know anything about this. First phone conversation, 10 minutes in. What do you do? I'm an astrologer. Oh, what's like that? What's that like? Oh, do you have the minute you're born? Bam. And all of a sudden I tell him all this stuff about himself, and he's like, it's not fair. You know everything about me and I don't know anything about you. And I was like, good luck getting it too, because I got a Mercury and Venus in Scorpio. So you're literally going to have to work for every single bit of it. And he loved it. He was totally hooked as of that moment. He was like, this woman is unlike anybody I'd ever met. And so he loves it when we'll be out in public and a conversation just develops, like with the cashier or just somebody or whatever. And I'll pull their chart and I'll look, and he just loves watching their face, because you'll see it. It's such a glorious thing to be a part of, and just kind of be a front row passenger to seeing people just come alive or have a light flicker on about, like, by the way, like, you have this incredible thing about you. And it's just, oh, it's the best thing ever.
I love that so much. So we kind of talked about this before we hopped on here, but I went and checked out her website, which do you want to drop that real quick?
Yeah, so illuxology.com. So illuxology is the study of the light-filled life, ILLUXOLOGY.
Perfect. So I went on to her website and she's got a bunch of free resources on there. So I was like, I'm going to do this because I haven't ran my reports in a while. So I ran it and I sent it over to her. So now I'm really interested to see what you think about my charts. So let me share my screen on here and pull it up here. And then you can just tell me where we want to go. So this is kind of what you get when you run the report, just so that you guys can kind of see it here. But
yeah, this is the free report that's included with the human design one, that once you run your chart, it'll print off like a free report with like a little link to the PDF. So if you scroll down and we can just look at your actual chart, and I can see that the icons in the personality side are not the right color, and I apologize, but that's my Virgo moon being like, I see the flaws. So what you see here, this is a human design chart. This is, of course, hers, and it's beautiful and perfect, but all human design charts are going to have 9 centers. So we'll just kind of do a quick little mini course overview of this, where you have 9 different centers, and some of them are going to have colors, and some of them are going to be white. You might have one that has all of them colored in, and you might have one that has all of them white. Those are much less common, like 1% of the population will have that, but the majority of people will have at least 2 centers colored in and up to 7 or 8 or 9 centers colored in. And so over on the right-hand side, you see where it says personality, and there's all these little numbers and there's symbols that you can't see because it's black on navy. That's the personality side. That's where all the planets were the moment that you were born. And that's like a snapshot of the energy that was infusing the planet Earth the moment you took your first breath. And over on the left-hand side is a similar corresponding list called design that has all the placements in like the red. Usually it's in a red tone, depending on what site you're running it on, but on mine that's like this. And that's where all the planets were 88 days before you were born. So the idea of human design is that you have the planets that are creating a consistent energy when you were born, and 88 days before was when your unconscious self was developed, and that energy is also consistently coursing through you, but at an unconscious level. So all of those correspond with gates, which is the numbers next to them, and there's 64 gates that they get activated based on where the planets were. And when certain planets are activated, they create a channel, and the channels create definition in the centers, and definition in the centers creates your aura type, which is how other people experience your aura when they're physically around you, or even just interacting with you in person or on the phone, and even chatting and things like that. What is so wildly valuable about this? Human design is very complicated. It makes astrology look like nursery level, and astrology is very complicated. But what is so incredible about human design is the most basic things are also the most impactful and will totally change your life, which is why it is gaining so much traction and so much power in the world. And like, I even saw Forbes recently did an article about human design. And so like, it's really becoming much more talked about because of the potency of the information. So you are what's called a generator, because you have a defined sacral, which is that kind of orangey brownish one, like not that one, the one, yeah, just above. So that sacral center corresponds with the sacral chakra that's right about like where a woman's uterus would be, or where that lower kind of abdomen area is. That's where the sacral center is located, both physically and also on the body graph chart here. And so having your sacral center defined gives you a ton of energy. You are an absolute magnificent powerhouse, and you have that consistent access that you can draw upon of that magnificent energy. And so when you want to do something, if it lights you up, which is definitely the key, you will have boundless energy, and it's like your energy will regenerate as you go if it's something that you love, that you feel like it's making a difference, or it's really just makes every cell in your body just sing, and you just like are like, oh, I love that I get to do this. It creates pleasure, it creates joy, it creates diversity, or whatever it is that you value. And that spark is just constantly flowing in you. And then you also have your root center and your spleen center defined, and each of those govern a whole area as well. So some people would have the same centers defined. Some people will have none of the same centers defined as you do, and those will all be white and they'll have the other ones colored in. Being a generator type, about 70% of the planet are generators. So we definitely live in a very generator driven world, which is amazing. Generators are incredible. You guys are the ones that are here to do and to build and to grow and to just explore and conquer. And it's like the most amazing energy. However, where you guys get into trouble is when you don't properly wait to respond to something. The generator strategy is to wait to respond, which means that something external needs to come into your space. And then you hear this or 70% of the planet hears an or a about this is the thing I want to do. This is not a thing I want to do. And if you go against that or you absolutely will regret it. It will be awful and terrible. And you will get what is called frustrated. So if you've ever heard the words come out of your mouth, I am so frustrated, that means as a generator type, you did not properly wait to respond for something to come into your space for you to respond to. Usually it means that you took initiative before waiting and it got all bungled up and it was terrible and you regret your choices and you can't undo it. Just wait to respond and the world is amazing.
Yeah, you're already saying things that I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so me. Like, just how you talked about like the energy that I bring to things. It's so funny because when I have something that like, like you said, that flip switches in me where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this idea, like I'm just gonna do it. My man will tell you, I will take it from idea to completed in like 5.5 seconds. But
Yeah.
if it's something I don't want to do, I will drag my feet forever and never do it.
100%. Yep. Yeah. 10 out of 10. And it, like, if you are sparked and lit up, you will move mountains. Like, and it won't even be that hard. And you'll find joy in it because it's not that you're trying to avoid things that are hard or difficult. Like, of course not. Hard and difficult can be one of the best things ever when you conquer it. If it is in alignment with something that is like creating something productive that aligns with you and what you deeply value. And if you don't deeply value it, or it's happening in a way that's not like honoring or supportive to who you are at your core, it will be drudgery and absolute hell. And my experience as a projector, so I don't have a defined sacral, so I don't have that physical consistent energy. My purpose on the planet is to guide others and specifically to guide generators, to help generators to use their magnificent energy in a very effective way. I feel like I'm just sitting on the sidelines always going like, I wish I could tell them that if they stopped doing this and did that twice and bought this $15 thing on Amazon, they would quadruple their output and have so much more fun. And like, to me, it's so obvious because my energy is so much lower. I have to find the most efficient way to do things. It's literally a matter of survival. And so the generators of the world are, your energy is so incredible. And I talk to generators, they're like, you talk about how amazing my energy is, but I'm so burnt out. And it's like, that's because you're consistently doing the things that you hate. And generators can get caught up in becoming enslaved. And your listeners are probably kind of a little bit broken out of the mold. They're not like, as go to work, clock in, do it if you hate it. Like, you have a little bit more of like the rogue, like, I'm going to go start my own business. But if you don't work through this energy, if you don't understand your energy alignment, you're absolutely going to trade in the job for the having a ton of bosses through your business. And it's going to become something that owns you just like a job does. And it's not that entrepreneurship isn't for you or you're not here to work or things like that. It's that your alignment, you get to claim that you get to do the things that light you up. And I have like such a soapbox that I'm like, if all the generators in the world just stopped like today, or maybe give it a couple of weeks so that we can have some a little bit more smoothness in the transition. But if you just stop doing the things that you hate doing and you started doing the things that you're responding to, that your sacral is going, because it's always leading you to what is the most magnificent life for you. If you stopped, the world would be amazing. And people say, like, what about who takes out the garbage and who's going to do the laundry and all the things? And it's like, I firmly believe that if we could run the world the way that I see it, there are waste management geniuses out there that would find a different way to deal with the trash, and they would find they would find joy in doing the laundry, right? Like, these people exist. And if we all just leaned into the things that just bring us so much joy, everything would get done and it would be wonderful. It doesn't mean you don't lift a finger to anything that, doesn't please you, but like, if you stopped investing your magnificent energy in a job or a business structure that you hate and that is sucking the life out of you, because you are here for joy. You are meant to do amazing, powerful, beautiful things. And you can't do it if you're spending 10 hours a day doing something that sucks you clean.
Mhm. Yes, that spoke to me in so many ways. I talk about that all the time because I definitely think that like hustle mentality has driven us into, like you said, even if we hopped out of like a traditional 9 to 5 and into entrepreneurship, we're still doing things that we hate. And I'm like, we don't have to do that. We have the freedom to choose. And really, in this last like couple years for me, I've really leaned into like knowing myself enough to let go of the things that aren't serving me, focus on the things that I'm really like passionate about, and also being able to listen to that or nuh-uh a little bit better in the last couple years. And it's crazy how much growth I have seen,
Yeah.
like, just because I've done those two things, like letting go of the things that aren't serving me and just like listening to that intuition a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. They call it the strategy and authority in human design is your strategy as a generator is to wait to respond. So you have to wait, not initiate without having something external to respond to. And your authority is your sacral center, which is that uh-huh. And so as you wait to respond and listen for the uh-huhs, uh-uhs, and like follow them, you will literally create the most amazing life for you. I was just chatting last night with this guy who was introduced to human design in 1997, and he is a generator type. And we just were chatting about a few things. He's developing a software that I've become really enchanted with just recently about human design, because I'm always on the hunt for the better software because I am so picky. And he was kind of just explaining his journey with it. And he said that he was so fortunate that he had a very rewarding and satisfying career as a massage therapist, so that he didn't have to worry about money. So he can just go have this as a passion project for creating the software. And it's just magnificent to see that somebody who had this information so young was able to truly craft their life where they didn't really detour into completely terrible career paths. And not that there's anything wrong if you have and you kind of lost your way a little bit, but this is the information that fixes that. This is where, when it's like, okay, well, my coach told me to do this, but it like feels wrong in my soul, it's probably because it's something that's against your human design. You might have a coach that's either not living true to themselves either, and so they're instructing you from that place, or it is that they're just not the same type. And so what has genuinely worked for them is not what's going to genuinely work for you. I personally feel like you shouldn't talk to a business coach unless they understand human design and astrology, because they can really mess you up, and they can give you a plan that has totally 10 out of 10 worked for other people, but it can't work for you. And so you need to know at least how to translate it for yourself. But ideally, a business coach would use this information to be able to help guide you as you are doing this thing that you love, and having it not burn you out so hardcore, which is so prevalent in women entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think it's so funny when you were talking about yours. You're like, I'm a projector. So, which it was funny because she brought that up when she first reached out to me. She's like, I don't usually reach out like this because I'm a projector, but I'm feeling called to do this. But it's so funny. You are literally built to be like a coach and a cheerleader for people. That like was your calling from the start to do that. And now look at you here.
Here I am. Yep, absolutely. And I can see in my chart how that plays out. And I can see where the shadow aspects of that come out, where it will burn me out if I'm not paying attention to what I need to.
Mm, so good to know, too. So on the chart, we've talked about kind of like these filled in portions. What about these like red and kind of navy colored lines going across, and then the different gates that are either opened or closed?
Yeah, so all of the lines that you're seeing that are kind of thickly filled in with the navy, those are your conscious placements. That's where your conscious planets are activating different gates within your chart. And the red ones are where it's your unconscious placements. When you have two that are electromagnetic gates, they create a channel. So you have like where you see the 50 and the 27 kind of come together, that connects your spleen and your sacral center. That is a channel of a lot of nurturing. It usually people who have that, they love making like really yummy food for people. They love kind of entertaining. And it's like the almost like the Italian grandmother of like, oh, you're too skinny, have some more. Like it's just kind of that energy that flows really beautifully between the two, because the spleen is the center for intuition and fears and instinct, and the sacral is the center for like powerful energy and sexuality and drive, like that kind of explosion of pleasure is really what the sacral has. And so you bring those two together, and that particular channel holds the energy of like, let's eat delicious food. And then you have your root center is defined from the 360 channel, and the root is the center of adrenaline and drive and timing. The root center, when it's defined, I love the root center. It's a motor. You have two motors in your chart. The sacral is a motor and the root is a motor. And then there's two others that you don't have defined. The root motor, it goes like on, off, on, off, on, off all day long. And it's that drive of like, okay, now I'm going to do the things, now I'm going to stop doing the things, and now I'm going to do the things, and now I'm going to stop doing the things. And it's this kind of rhythm that just like a knowing of like, I'm going to work on my to-do list and then I'm going to put it down. And then I'm going to come back and work on my to-do list and then I'm going to put it down. Somebody who has this one white, they don't have that. They feel unbelievable amounts of pressure to do the things, do the things, do the things. They're the person that's like, let me just hurry up and finish my to-do list before I pee or before I get out the door or whatever. It's like, sweetie, your to-do list is 8 days long. Like that's not a thing. Like that's not how it works. And so they feel all of this pressure coming at them all the time because it's a pressure center of like do. But somebody who has a defined root, there's pressure, but it's not like, it's the pressure that feels like it's fine because it goes on and off and on and off. And so when I talk to people who are very energetically sensitive and have an undefined root center, and they're around me, I have a defined root center. And my sweet husband has every gate on his root center activated except for one, and has 3 channels coming off of it. So his root center is like crazy grounded. I love it so much, but it creates a ton of pressure. If you're physically in the space, if you have an undefined root and you're around somebody that has a defined root, the defined root could be like, what a lovely day. The sky is such a beautiful shade of blue. And the undefined root will be like, I know I'm behind. Why do you keep bringing it up? And it's like, I didn't even say anything. I wasn't thinking that. Like, I'm not over here judging you. But there's so much pressure that they feel that it's so important to examine, like, is anybody actually pressuring you? Or do you just feel pressure because of the ominous feeling that you're behind? And so people with an undefined root need to change their relationship with timing and with getting things done. And they have a different way of grounding themselves than somebody who has a defined root.
That's so interesting. I would bet that my partner has it open because he's very much like, I have to be working 100% of the time or I'm failing type of person. Although I don't know if he would know what time he was born, but maybe I'll have to like sneak his birth certificate or something.
I fully support this.
But it's awesome that we can like look at this stuff and have that knowledge though, not just like about ourselves, but about our like partners too, or our kids or other things too.
Save entire relationships. Like how many relationships started out amazing because when you're in love, everything is okay and wonderful. And then you just get like a few years in and a little bit of the luster goes away. And most of the time, the person that we've fallen in love with is not actually who they are. We fill in the gaps and pieces, and it's so rare to truly see somebody accurately. Like you would have to do such like decades worth of self-work to actually see the other person accurately, right? Like we all do it. And so when the kind of the mask falls off, we usually feel betrayed. Like you get a few years into something and you're like, you're not who I thought you were, as though they did something to you. And it's like
That
offensive.
3 to 6 month mark. Yeah. Where you're just like no longer pretending to be that person. person anymore.
And there's that, like, there's just a little bit more of that awakening. And it's not that anybody was being deceptive. We all put our best foot forward because, we don't actually want to chase them away. But just being able to accept that everybody has light and shadow, and just being able to kind of discern, like, how much are they living in their light and shadow? How much am I living in my light and shadow? And just kind of knowing what to expect from that person. My sweet husband and I joke all the time because he's an Aries. I love Aries. It's like my favorite energy. I'm a Sagittarius, so Aries and Sag, epic duo. But Aries can be, they're kind of a little bit ornery sometimes, and they're just a little bit, and I just love it. I just think it's so great. And so when he's a little bit in his Aries, he'll be like, I'm sorry. He's like, it's just the way I'm like, hey, I was fully informed. I saw your chart from day one. Like, I knew what I was getting into. So, like, there's no room for me to complain about this. I knew it and I went for it anyway. And so it's just this fun teasing that we can do, but I try to create and protect the space for him to be him, and in turn he does that for me. And we fiercely protect each other's hearts and each other's selves. And that is the most delicious thing. That is what will perpetuate a relationship to go forever, is when you feel safe to be who you are and to explore new parts of you. Be like, I don't know if this is who I am, but I'm going to try this on for a while.
Mhm.
Like, you have an undefined identity center, which is the diamond in the middle. That means
I'm always looking.
you don't have a consistent orientation to who you are and what direction you're going. And you're supposed to be that way. You will be different based on who you're around. And you've probably received a lot of criticism for that, of people being like, why don't you just pick who you are? Or just decide who you are and go with it. And it's like, I literally can't. And so you're like, the entrepreneur with the undefined identity center is likely to be the one that's like, rebranding all the time, and let me just update my colors, and let me just change my font, and what if I change the name of this, and just kind of chasing every 6 months there's something totally new going on with the direction. And just accepting, like, you're undefined in who you are and you're supposed to be that way. It's like trying on other people's clothes, putting on this person's hat and this person's jacket and that person's scarf and this boot over here, and just try it on. But at the end of the day, take it all off and go to bed naked, because you are meant to be free of any encumbrance on who you are, because you'll be fluid.
I love that word fluid. It makes it so much better and more positive. Because yeah,
Right.
I mean, I've definitely noticed that in myself. Like when I was in a narcissistic, abusive relationship, I definitely had a different personality, I would say, than the person that I am now and the person I was in high school. And like even after, some of the traumas that I went through, like it shifted me into a completely other direction. Luckily for me, I kind of knew that about myself. So my business, when I created it, I made it so that I could be open to kind of shifting and being able to turn in lots of different directions and be multi-passionate in all of the different things. So I did know that about myself, at least to the point where I could do that. So
Yeah, I have a light-filled human design course that's just all of this, and that is the number one module that people will reach out and they'll say, thank you so much for the one on the undefined identity center. Because every single one of your centers that's white, you have probably a healthy amount of shame over, that you should be this or you shouldn't be that, because every center that's white, you have inconsistent access to the energy that that center governs. And so each one is a whole world of healing. And the identity center specifically, like, it's the heart chakra. It's like the core of like who you are. And so to have that one in particular be undefined, our world is so ready to shame people that have this undefined, because there's people that from the time they were little, they were like, I know who I am and I know what I'm doing. Like, those are the people that like knew they wanted to work as a doctor when they were 6, and then they ended up doing that, or something else that was kind of obscure or whatever. All 3 of my children have it defined. Mine is not defined, and my sweet husband is not defined. And so I just let them have their own experience, and I'm not trying to coax them out of like, don't decide who you are at this point. Like, I'm not trying to shame them for their clarity on their direction, just like I now can claim that, cool, I just get to be different and move as I go.
I love that. I love that so much. And yeah, so you talked a little bit about the chakras. So this is basically the same system as chakras with one extra, correct?
There's actually 2 extras. So
Two
yes,
extras.
we missed that in the overview, that human design is a synthesis of Western astrology, the Kabbalah, the I Ching, the chakra system, and quantum physics. So each of these corresponds pretty much with the chakras. The head center corresponds with the crown chakra. The ajna is the second triangle there. It corresponds with the third eye chakra. The throat with the throat, the identity center with the heart center. But then there's that little tiny triangle that's a little off to the side. That's also called the heart center or the will center or the ego center, depending on what software you're using. So the heart center split, the heart chakra split into those two centers in the year 1781. We were a seven-centered being before that, but in 1781, they split, and then the solar plexus split and became the spleen and the emotional center. So those two triangles on the side. And so that is the solar plexus center, and then the sacral, and then the root. And it was in the year 1781 that projectors started to exist on the planet. Before, when we were just a seven-centered being, there were no projectors. They didn't exist.
Huh. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy that this has all been around for such a long time, but I feel like it's just becoming more
Yeah.
kind of common knowledge, or, something that more people are interested
Yes.
in and learning about, like in the recent years. Like I just heard about it probably 2 years ago, I would say. Before then, I had never heard of it
Yeah.
before.
And there's reasons for that. Like astrologically speaking, we're moving into a lot of Aquarian placements. You've probably heard of the age of Aquarius. It's there's a disagreement on when we actually entered the age of Aquarius, because it's like a 2,000-year cycle for the age. And so somewhere between about 2000 and 2020-ish was when we were, but now everybody agrees we are solidly in the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius is about the future and thinking outside of the box and technology. And it actually is the sign that also rules astrology. And so we are now in this massive awakening, and will be for the next 2,000 years, of being open to totally bizarre ideas that we never could have collectively. So the collective consciousness is definitely waking up. And I think pretty much anybody who spends 5 seconds thinking about it can agree that there's a collective awakening that's happening, no matter what you label that or what you think people are awakening from. There's definitely that going on. And Pluto has just entered Aquarius, which Pluto takes about anywhere from 12 to 30 years to go through a sign. So it's a very long, slow transition, and has just entered Aquarius, started last year, and he'll finally stay in Aquarius by the end of this year and will be there for another 20 years. And so Aquarius, again, is that sign of the awakening and all of those things. And so in that, what we're seeing is this death and destruction to the old processing of old ideas and out of the box, and a complete restructuring and transformation to everything having to do with Aquarius.
Hmm. Very interesting. That makes sense. Feel like you've seen that a lot in like the kind of deconstruction of religion in like the last 20 or so years as well. A lot of people leaving religion and
Yeah.
going more into spirituality.
It's exactly right, because Pluto just finished its journey through Capricorn, which is the sign. It was a total death and destruction and dismantling to traditions, governments, religions, anything that is like old, deeply rooted kind of structures that are rigid and just do things because this is how we've always done them type of energy. And so anything like that, like the visual I get is like really big construction equipment that's like broken up a highway that's like, 15 feet thick worth of concrete that's like just been like broken up, and it's kind of a little bit crazy. It hasn't been cleaned up yet, but it's in process, and the Aquarius energy will come and be able to do its own thing. There's such a beautiful flow to the way that the signs move in escorting us through the different cycles of life. And so we go from that Capricorn to Aquarius, and then Pisces will come after in about 20 years and kind of smooth all of that out, but also really, really amplify the spirituality aspect. So we think spirituality has been a hot topic. Like, give it 20 years and spirituality will be totally transformed starting in 20 years. Mark it on your calendar.
Yeah, I'll be watching. I'll be making sure. So we only have a few more minutes here. And you said that when you were looking through my chart, there were some specific things that stuck out here. So I would love for you to kind of take me through them real quick.
You bet. It's actually more in your astrology chart specifically.
Okay.
Your human design, definitely. We have so much more we could unpack.
I mean, yeah, there's a
But
lot here.
And this report doesn't actually include your astrology, it's only your human design. But
Okay.
I can either share the screen or we can just chat about it and just talk
Yeah.
about the concepts.
Share the screen.
Okay, so this is the astrology chart, and I like using astro charts. I love things about it. I don't love other things about it, but I like how visually it displays the relationships that are going on within your chart. So you can see this is just of the human design. This is only the stuff that's conscious, and there's more going on here than what you'll see in human design. So the most basic things to pay attention to, I'm actually going to turn off the extra stuff because it's a little bit more
There's a lot.
and they matter, but like I want it, you can see it's a little cleaner now. I just have them all turned on as a default, but if I'm trying to kind of show somebody else, you have so many cool things going on and a few that are really, really tricky. So anytime you look at a chart, you're going to look at the sun sign, and it's always going to be a circle with a dot in it. No matter what software you're looking at, it's going to be basically the same thing. And of course, you're a Cancer. And I would imagine that in some ways that's really resonated with you because you have 3 placements in Cancer. You have your Mercury, Venus, and the sun. That's a lot of concentration. So you probably resonate with being kind of nurturing and protective and security oriented and emotive and all of those things, right?
Yeah.
But your sun sign is in what's called the 8th house, which is the house of the occult and the things that people don't want to talk about. And it's about revealing the things that are hidden. And it's also about inheritances. Sometimes, actual classic inheritances like, oh, your uncle left you all this money or whatever. But really what we're seeing so much is that this is the inheritances of like generational trauma and generational gifts. And so you've got a lot of energy there where you're probably nurturing in a lot of your ancestors through the work that you're doing to heal and release and shed and just kind of cleanse and purge some of the things that have gone on in your family line, whoever knows how far back, that really just need to not continue and persist. And so you get to be a massive chain breaker with having your sun sign in the 8th house. That's a big deal. And then your moon sign is your inner world. It's how you are when no one else is around. It's how your emotions filter. It's such a powerful placement. Like in a lot of ways, everybody's heard about their sun sign. What's your star sign? What's your sign? You've been hearing about that your whole life. So many people don't even know that they have a moon sign. And the moon goes through a different sign entirely every 2.5 days. And so it's not like you could know based on the day that you were born where your moon is. Like it could be anywhere. So that's why you need just some simple software to run your chart. And what's so fascinating about your moon is it's not just doing its own thing. Look at all these lines coming right off from your moon area, and it's all cuddled up with this little funny looking 5, which is Saturn. So you have your moon conjunct Saturn is what it's called, and it's directly opposing Chiron and Mars. And it is in a glorious grand trine with your sun and ascendant. And like all of those things, anybody who's listening that knows anything about astrology is like, oh my gosh, now I know so much more about you. And so having this opposition here, anytime you have something that's opposing the sun or the moon, it will feel like you perpetually have a power struggle that is going on in your life that you are working out within you, but you will manifest that outside of you so that you can have this beautiful divine opportunity to work through the energy. And knowing that can help you to maybe not engage in like a more toxic dynamic, and you can choose into something that's a little bit more healthy and aligned. But having your moon in Pisces makes you very dreamy and like able to just be very, very free of like the physical realm when you're thinking of concepts or things like that. And you can daydream like nobody's business. And like it's the idea of like, oh, hold on, I'll be right back. And you like go step out the back door in your mind and you can just be like floating out there for hours or days, right? And so you have this very, very expansive, ethereal, undefined world where it's like 1 foot on the planet and 1 foot on the other side of the veil. Powerful spiritual gifts with Pisces moon. But with it being all cuddled up with Saturn, Saturn is like, imagine like a Capricorn energy. It's very dominant. It's very discipline oriented. It's very much like diligence and did you do your homework and have you followed through and you did it wrong, start over from the beginning. Like it's a very kind of harsh mastery energy that loves to give gifts, but only the gifts that come when you are living in integrity.
Mhm.
And the integrity of Saturn is going to be the classic stuff, of course, like, don't steal from people and don't punch people in the face and, that type of stuff. But integrity for you is going to look really different than integrity for me. Because what's in integrity for you is your business between you and your Saturn. And it's going to look like what should you be eating to be most in alignment with your body, like not out of judgment, but out of like, this is how your body feels the best. How much sleep should you be getting? How many podcasts should you be booking a week? How, like, that stuff has to do with integrity. Because if you're not living in alignment with your own individual constitutional integrity, then you get a really messed up life. And Saturn is the one that's there to say, nope, you're going to do this the right way. And so when we live in alignment with the things that we know we need to do, even when they're kind of not the most fun, Saturn will reward. But having Saturn in your moon conjunct means everything that involves emotions in your life, which is basically everything because we're emotional beings, involves that Saturn energy. So you really can't, quote, get away from it, which some people have a Saturn placement that's there, but it's not really a dominant energy. Yours is incredibly dominant. And then with it directly opposing Chiron and Mars, Chiron is the soul wound. It's the soul healer. It is the energy of the thing that will take you decades to work through. And it just hurts every time that you think about it or somebody bumps up against it. And Mars is that passion and that drive and that ability to set boundaries. And so you've got that opposing it all the time. And then this grand trine is glorious and fabulous and expansive and easy and wonderful. And so you have like this really powerful energy that is coming and going all the time. Some of it feels really good and some of it feels really hard. And it probably feels hard more than it doesn't. But I love that you have this gorgeous grand trine to kind of, it's almost like if you've ever cooked with a pressure cooker or like an instant pot that has the pressure cooker valve, when you like hit the little valve and it's like shh, and like all the steam, it like the
Yeah.
pressure starts to release. This grand trine gives you that pressure releasing from this opposition.
Mm.
And it creates, you can see here you have like a rectangle. It's actually called the mystic rectangle with this trine energy here and trine energy here in the green, and then the two purples on the top and bottom, and then the X in the middle of the blue. That creates like, it's almost like the energy of the alchemist or the like how witches used to be accused of stuff because they were able to just be so attuned to like what herbs would work and things like that, because there's just this magnificent flow with just enough tension with the oppositions, but a lot of the relief with the what's called sextiles, the purple, and then the green is the trines. So it creates this really gorgeous dance that you can harness that energy, but somebody else will see it in you and they'll recognize it in you. They'll maybe even want to kind of harness it and use it for themselves. But this is really remarkable. It's not typical. And then to top it all off, your ascendant is how you show up in the world. It's your first impression when you're meeting somebody and first talking to them is Scorpio, which is very much the like, I'll tell you very little, but I want you to tell me everything. Like, let me start a podcast where people tell me all of their stuff and I'll share what I want to share. And it'll seem like I'm sharing a lot, but I'm sharing 10% of what I could possibly share. And so it's like, if you've ever had one of those doors that has like the chain on it and you like open it up with the chain still attached and it's like, what do you want? What's your blood type? What's your purpose here? Like, it's very like, I don't want to let you in until I feel safe enough to let you in type of a thing.
Mhm.
And so it's a very suspicious energy, but your poker face would be so good about it. Nobody would know it was suspicious. I find I have a lot of rising Scorpios in my space because it leads off with such a powerful energy. And obviously I can handle power in my space. I'm a very intense person, but it also is an energy of like needing that kind of safe space to be around somebody who, like, I can see Scorpio energy and I'm like, just so you know, I see it. I'm not going to go pry you open or anything, but like I see that it's there, and just kind of honoring that the Scorpio needs to be pursued and needs evidence to open up and is going to be the first to clam up as well. Be like, this isn't really smelling right anymore. I'm out.
Yeah.
Because that Scorpio just can be a little bit suspicious. So that is a very quick overview of some
Very
like
quick.
powerful things. There's like 15 other things that we can talk about for another hour about your chart. But
Yes.
when I pulled those up, I was like, dang, girl.
It's so funny that you were saying all of that stuff because I was like, yep, yep, yep. resonates with me. I'm like, I can go off into my own dream world, and it's so funny, like, especially when I'm doing something like lifting or something, because I'm a power lifter,
Mhm.
like, when I'm, like, able to tune out all of the other stuff, I kinda go into that dream world of myself, and that's when I get, like, my best, most like aligned ideas. And
Yeah.
then that other part of me is like, okay, now we have to actually like put in the steps on how we're going to get there. And like, so all of those pieces are all kind of like working together. And I'm very open with people, but I'm also very private with people at the same time, like until I get to know them. And I definitely love being able to do the podcast because I like being on this side of the seat a lot more like being on that side of the seat. So,
Yep. And it's perfect for you. You create that space where people can share in a powerful way, and you're not feeling like I need to share about me, because you're like, I'll share about me when I feel like it.
exactly. It's great. No, this was so great. And I'm sure there's like so much that we didn't touch in here. There's obviously like you guys didn't even get to see all of the document that I had ran. Plus we barely even touched the astrology part of things. So there's so much here. Obviously we couldn't do it in the hour that we were here, but if people want to run their own charts or if they have more questions as they're kind of looking through this on, okay, what does this actually mean? How can I apply this to my parenting? How can I apply this to my work? All of those different things. Where do we find you? What free resources? What kind of like coaching programs do you have out there? Everything available.
You bet, absolutely. So I have a totally free mini course that goes over the most basics about astrology and the most basics about human design. And you get an idea of my flavor, which you probably have by now after listening to us chat about it for an hour. And so you can go to illuxology.com. And if you're like, I don't know how to spell that, and it makes your brain shut off, go to learnastrology.com. And that just redirects to my website. And you can go to right there on the homepage. It's click here to get your free mini course. And in that, you'll get that. And I send out a weekly email as well about the transits so you can kind of keep up. I've got a ton of courses. I've got a lot of content. And my crowning jewel is that I certify light-filled astrologers. So I have over 111 that have gone through my program so far. I have 33 fully certified light-filled astrologers, and it's growing all the time. I open and close cohorts. I take very small groups so that I can really give them the time and attention. And that is where you get basically conversations like this about your chart, like ongoing for 12 weeks in a group setting where we're all learning about each other. And it's very high emphasis on light and spirituality and truth and alignment and doing the healing work and all of that while mapping it out with the lens of astrology. And we do a sprinkling of human design in there as well, but we really just stay focused on the astrology piece because it's enough that it's more than enough information to process.
Fair enough. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for reaching out to me and getting this set up. This was so much fun. So thank you, Naomi.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you so, so much.
Hey guys, thanks for coming to this week's episode of The Confident Mompreneur. If you loved today's episode, let us know, share to your stories and tag us, send to your friends, give us a rating, all of the things, and make sure to check out our guests and follow them on all of the links that we listed above. If you're looking for me, you can always find me at The Confident Mompreneur, and you can also check it out www.theconfidentpost.com for a blog relating to today's episode. I am so happy you're here, and I hope to see you again next week.